Platinum Physical Therapy doing our runner talk series again. We started this about a month ago and had some really good guests on. Tonight, we're going to be talking about finding gratitude and joy through adversity, both from a running perspective as well as just a life perspective. I'm going to introduce our guests here tonight. First, we have Rachel Schneider. Rachel was born and raised in Sanford, Maine. She is the youngest of 4 children and grew up wanting to do everything that her older siblings did. She competed in the 2010 Junior World Track and Field Championships. Then she ran cross country and track for Georgetown University, where she was a 9-time All-American. She graduated in 2013 with a Bachelor of Science in Human Science and a minor in philosophy. Then graduated in 2015 with a master's degree in sports industry management. She's been running professionally now for Under Armour since 2015. She just this past fall competed in the 2019 World Track and Field Championships for Team USA and has the Olympic standards for the 2021 Olympics in both the 1500 meter and the 5K. So she's looking forward to that. She currently lives and trains in Flagstaff, Arizona with her partner and coach, Mike Smith, and also their 3 dogs. She is volunteers for the Big Brothers and Big Sisters Foundation and has done that since 2017 and loves running, hiking, stand-up paddleboarding, camping, exploring, reading, and cooking. So that's our welcome to Rachel here. Next, on the lower part of my screen anyway, we'll introduce Colin Liebold. Colin grew up in Falls Church, Virginia, which is just outside of Washington, D.C., in a big family playing many, many sports. He discovered distance running as a freshman in high school, and he's loved the sport ever since. Running took him from Georgetown University, where he majored in biology of global health and earned All-American honors in the 5,000 meters, then took him to Stanford, where he earned a master's degree in epidemiology and clinical research. He set a PR there in the 5,000 meters of 13:39 and met his future wife. He is now a 3rd-year medical student at UMass Medical School in Worcester, Mass. He is inspired by the example, or recently was inspired by the example of Roger Bannister and set out to break the 4-minute mile last year. He was fortunate enough to run a 3:59.5 and hopes to always be both a student and a runner. And then last but not least, we have with us special guest tonight, Jack Foltz. Jack won the Boston Marathon in 1976 in the famous Run for the Hoses. He has a marathon PR of 2:11:17, which he achieved in Boston in 1978. He has been a training advisor and coach for Dana-Farber Marathon Challenge Team for all 31 years that it's been in existence, and they have raised over $100 million so far for basic innovative cancer research at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. He currently coaches individuals, all types of runners. He formerly taught sports psychology at Tufts University for 27 years. He's ridden in the Pan Mass Challenge for the past 17 years, enjoys biking, rowing, jogging, stretching, lifting weights, and even doing CrossFit from his wood pile in front of his house or in back of his house. And then lastly, my name is James Cassidy. I'm the owner of Platinum Physical Therapy and Sports Medicine that has 4 locations here in Metro West Boston. I am originally from Colorado, where I attended CU Boulder. I ran in high school and was able to compete at the state meet, and then in college did both triathlon team and crew. I continued to run recreationally throughout college and after. I received my master's in physical therapy from Nova Southeastern University in Florida and opened up my clinics in 2004. I've treated professional runners, professional triathletes, professional cyclists, and have also had the opportunity to work with the Boston Ballet. So that we are your panel for this evening. I'm going to kind of keep the conversation directed. I've got some questions already written and prepared. We also can see questions if people would like to submit any questions through Facebook. We can see those and we'll add them in during or at the end if we have some time. We can take kind of questions from the audience. So just a brief kind of introduction of why we're doing this here tonight. I decided to assemble this group because all 3 of you guys are 3 of the most positive people who I've met, who inspire me all in different ways. I don't know any one of you really, really well, but I've had opportunity to work with you all in varying degrees and formats, and it's just I find you all very inspiring people. So I spoke to Rachel, and she suggested the topic for tonight, actually, which just sounded great. And I thought, hey, we'll get a couple more Hoyas out here. We'll get some good positive vibes going and have a good discussion. So we'll get going with that. So to start off, I thought we would define gratitude, since that is one of our main topics. Definition of gratitude is the quality of being thankful and the readiness to show appreciation for and to return kindness to others. Also, another definition, just affirmation of goodness. We recognize sources of goodness outside of ourselves. So we'll get discussing this tonight. And we'll start off talking about goal setting and how that can help when we're dealing with adversity in different times, whether we're talking about our running lives and running careers, or whether we're talking about life outside of running. So I'm going to have you start us off, Jack. How do goals and goal setting play into this finding joy and finding gratitude? Do you have any personal thoughts, or professionally with your sports psychology background? How do goal setting and goals potentially play into this joy and gratitude?
Well, my high school coach, who I had actually in class, science class, football field, basketball court, and on the running track, um, he gave us some a multitude of great pieces of advice over the course of our 3-4 years working with him, and one of them still sticks with me to this day, and it has to do with goal setting in a sense, even though he doesn't articulate goal setting. Said to get anywhere in this life, you got to know three things. Got to know where you are, you got to know where you're going, and you got to decide how you're going to get there. So that ostensibly defines this notion of goal setting. And so to have a good sense of where we're going at any given direction, there's direction and momentum that kind of dictates our life, everyone's life. And so if we don't choose what those are, they're going to be chosen for us. We have no choice, I think, from start to end of our life. And so choosing what those goals are, of course, enable us to build the whole foundation of the direction that our life takes in professional life, in athletics, and personal relationships, in all of that. And it's not to say that you can just map out your life and have it play out the way that it works. I probably have 1 or 2 weeks of training in my entire athletic career that on the end of the week worked out exactly the way I had planned it at the beginning of the week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being flexible, I think, is critically important as a part of that idea of goal setting. But it's about having dreams, and we all have dreams. But to really articulate them and formulate a plan and build a world around you that will be supportive of those dreams. So I rarely would share my goals with people who I thought were not going to be supportive of them. I would
Mm-hmm.
only really share them with people who would say, "Yeah, you can do that." We had to figure out how, but
Yeah.
but all I think always just simply having a goal and laying it out. You can go to an extreme. Jumbo Elliott, the coach at Villanova, who coached many great superstars over the course of his career there, had a dictum that addresses this too, I think, and it's related to it. He said, "Live like a clock." So living like a clock is basically having structure in your day, in your week, in your month, and all of those, they all lead toward each successive, next step, which is basically goal setting 101. And then of course there's a structure to how we set those goals to make them more effective than others. Sports Psych 101. They need to be challenging but achievable. Short term leading to goal term, and there's to long term. Excuse me. There's a small structure of exactly how to do them so that they're much more effective than just sort of willy nilly waking up in the morning. What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Plugging in. I don't want to steal the mic here, but and even on a daily basis, to know what you're going to do the next morning and the next day before you go to bed that night, so that when you wake up in the morning and start milling around for the day, you don't then decide, okay, what am I going to do today? If you
Right.
already know that, the first step that you take in the morning is actually your second step. You've made the decision the night before, and even think of your night's sleep as not recovery from that day, but the first step in resting up so you have a more effective day that you wake up to. So just little mechanical things like that, I think, are all related to this idea of goal setting and have
Hmm.
us proceeding, in the direction that we have chosen to do so, and then do it with with the speed with which we can put the energy into making that happen.
Sure. No, that's good. What, Colin or Rachel, do you guys have any examples of how you guys use currently goal setting, either in your athletic endeavors, as Jack referred to, or else just in your personal lives through school or other things?
Um, yeah, I think everything Jack just said is awesome. I kind of, before setting goals, kind of first start with like the purpose or the meaning behind what I'm doing. And when I can identify that, then I'll make some like short-term goals and some long-term goals. And I'll keep I have a checklist which kind of tracks the habits to achieving those goals, both the short term and the long term. And whenever I feel like mentally fatigued or if I feel like I'm off path, I'll just kind of bring it back to the meaning of why I'm pursuing these aspirations and have set these goals, and see if the goals and the meaning are within line with each other. So that's kind of my broad
Yeah.
little.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit about kind of how I've set goals this spring, because I think a lot of people have had this shared experience of having a goal or at least an expectation about what was going to happen or what you wanted to do in the spring and summer, and that for pretty much everyone it got turned on their head. And personally, I was really excited to try to qualify for the Olympic trials. It would be my first, U.S. outdoor championship, and that was a goal that was inspiring me to get out the door every morning and train really hard. And then that obviously changed. That the Olympic trials have been postponed. So I think a lot of people were confronted with this question of how am I going to respond to this? And after the initial kind of like disappointment and the discouragement, what am I going to do? How am I going to get myself out the door in the morning? And so when I'm confronted with that kind of a problem, I use the Jesuit idea of discernment. And Georgetown is a Jesuit school, and there's this idea of trying to figure out whether an impulse is kind of right for you or not. And they use language of whether it comes from God or not, but I think this idea works for regardless of whether you use that language or not. But basically, the idea is if an idea gives you peace and enthusiasm and excitement, then it's probably the right thing to do. And if an idea kind of discourages you or gets you down, then it might not be the right thing to do. And it's not like a one-off decision. This is kind of a process that is ongoing, but that's kind of the principle that I use. And this spring, at least, what that got me to is I decided I was really fired up to try to train for the 800 meters, which is something that I hadn't done since high school. And I thought I could probably set a PR, and so I got really excited about it and did a couple of middle distance workouts and went out to the track last week with my wife, and I got the PR by like 300ths of a second. But, that was just one example of something that I realized over the course of days and weeks that was something that really excited me and that was going to get me out the door in the morning. So decided to do it.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. So again, having even in that case a shorter term goal, but something to help you find some joy in these kind of uncertain times. When we're all kind of searching for, well, what am I supposed to be doing? My plans have changed. So yeah, having those goals, I think that makes sense. That's good. It's good you're able to do it, and yeah, that's good. Very good. Let me see what we have here next. So Rachel, I was going to put the next question to you, put you on the hot spot here. So are there some adverse times that you have overcome that you can kind of touch on, and how you use those to drive gratitude and joy, since that is the title that you came up with for this?
Yeah. I know, it's so cool. Thanks for organizing a Georgetown alum panel on this. It's way more fun.
Yeah.
Gosh, adverse times, definitely. I think any runner that's been in the sport long enough has probably dealt with some sort of injury, some more than others, but that's always really tough. Yeah, those are no everyone who's running or in it for this long is, I think, doing it out of love and out of joy. So not being able to run is always tough, especially right now. Like Colin's saying, we all kind of imagined what this year would be, being an Olympic year and having certain races and goals, and not having those anymore and not knowing when the next opportunities might come definitely feels sad and challenging in its own ways. So the ways that I've kind of dealt with adversities, especially with injuries and especially right now, is framing it through gratitude of being able to appreciate all the good things in my life. And that comes down to when you're coming back from an injury, like that feeling of gratitude comes so easy because just getting out the door is such a joy, and the ability to run and have a healthy body and do what you love again is the gratitude comes so easy. So I think coming back to times when it feels challenging to have gratitude or the joy is not always as easy, that's when I try to really intentionally practice it. And sometimes it's easier than others, but when you can really focus on the things that you do experience gratitude for, then I think getting through those tough times is a lot easier and a lot more meaningful, and you end up realizing just kind of how good things can be and the connections and the relationships in your life that are really good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and with adversity, there's obviously different durations. I mean, we're in kind of a longer duration now, but Jack, I was wondering if you could touch on, you certainly overcame adversity in that Boston Marathon win in 76. It was only a little over 2 hours of adversity, but that still, the toll that must have taken with the heat and with everything else going on. I mean, that's serious adversity. Can you give us any, how you mentally were able to work through kind of the heat and that adversity in that race to, propel yourself up to the front and as a champion there?
Well, using that as a specific example of it, it's hard to really connect all the dots because the way I had worked my whole cognition going into it, I didn't see the heat as an adversity for me. It was certainly going to slow me down, but my primary goal coming to Boston that year, it was my fourth time running Boston, so I knew the course, and it was an Olympic year, 76, so I was there to get my Olympic trials qualifying time. Because I was still in school, I didn't have the opportunity to run a qualifying marathon time for the trials in the previous year. All the other top Americans had done so. They were all out of school. So I was there, and it was my third and final try. I tried earlier in the year several times. And again, it wasn't because I wasn't fit or healthy, just conditions went against me. And so third time's a charm. Here the heat turned up. But I had, and I didn't know exactly how fast I could run on an ideal day. But I had used my track times and my training to kind of speculate where I was. I thought I was probably close to a 2:15, 2:16 shape on a perfect day, and I had a good race. The qualifying standard was 2:20, so that gave me a 4-minute cushion from the heat. And then the B standard, which was 2:23, meaning I could go run the trials, but the U.S. Olympic Committee would not pay my way, was the only difference. And so I didn't have to worry about that. So in my mind, I had a 6 to 7 minute cushion to get my qualifying time. And I figured the heat's going to slow everybody down somewhat similarly. I mean, I just speculated that. I had to for my own sanity. And so I was right back in the same position, hot or cold day. I'm going to be in the top 10 in my mind's eye. That was my goal. And I knew on a good day, top 10 would get me below the 2:20 standard I was after. There was no way to know where you were on the course back then because there were no clocks. There were no mile checkpoints. We didn't have digital watches. You didn't know where you were vis-a-vis time until they told you 20 minutes after you finished the race. So it was a whole different era back then. So anyway, so in terms of, back to the original premise here, in terms of turning adversity into an opportunity, I guess I did that simply by keeping my mind on my prize, on what I was about, and I decided I wasn't going to the external factors distract me from my pursuit. It wasn't to say they weren't going to slow me down, because they obviously did, but I was able to reposition that all so that I was still had something positive to be pursuing, rather than lament the fact that I wasn't going to be able to achieve my original goal because of factors beyond my control. So you basically reset the stage so that you're still always pursuing something positive that you know is within your reach given the circumstances around you. And I think you do have to be flexible in every pursuit that we do, because there are always uncontrollable factors that play a role. So all the people that we know run marathons every year, people planning to run Boston, every one of them has a finishing time goal. Even first timers, I mean, I encourage them not to think of their finishing time so much as a pace per mile, but that translates into some finishing time. So it's always there. But it always assumes, and we forget that all the training and then pursuing those goals assumes an ideal weather day, and it rarely is. So when we get out to Hopkinton on Marathon Monday and it turns out to be 70 degrees or warmer, I have to tell all 500 plus of our runners as they file out to the starting line over the course of an hour or so, forget that goal time and the pace that you had planned to run. You got to add 30 to 40 seconds per mile for the first 10 miles anyway. And then if you find you were too conservative, you can get some of that time back. But it's imperative you do that. So we all have to be very flexible, I think, in our goal pursuits. But the idea, again, the seed of our conversation here is turning adversity into an opportunity. There's an opportunity that resides in every circumstance, every situation that there is. Extreme examples, we have people who are cancer survivors on our team. And to the person, they'll give testimonials and they'll say, look, I wouldn't wish this to ever have to go through my treatment again. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But I have to tell you, it changed my life for the better. I see life differently now than I otherwise would have, and it's a positive thing. So they've too have done just that, turned that seed of opportunity, of adversity, into opportunity. You mentioned Colin chasing the 4-minute mile and getting it. Congratulations, Colin, because of Roger Bannister's influence. Well, Roger Bannister never would have broken the 4-minute mile had he won the 52 Olympic 1500 meter that he was slated to win and run. But he didn't win it because they added a third race. You probably all know the story. And so he didn't win the gold medal. He went back home dejected, and the sports media was coming down on him real hard, and he thought of retiring, and he said, no, I'm going to stay in the game for another 4 years and go back and go for my Olympic gold in the 56 games. And it was in that interim that he started back on the chase for the 4-minute mile. Had he won the 52 Olympic 1500 meters, none of us would ever even know his name. So it was turning that disappointment of losing in 52 that he turned into this monumental experience. And it's a perfect example of what is available to all of us at any turn.
Yeah, no, those are great examples. Great examples. I'm going to bring in a question from the audience here. Somebody asked, do any of you have any positive mantras that you use either when you run or just in daily life?
Yeah, I've been using mantras in races probably since sophomore year of college, and it was kind of a decision based on a few races where I kind of let my thinking control the way that I ran the race and was trying to look for a solution to that. So it was kind of purely this problem-solving idea. But the ones I typically use are, depends on the race, but a lot of times I'll start with something like smooth and flow for the first quarter, third of the race, and then something like strong in the middle of the race to keep me going, and something like compete or fast at the end to really get me geared up. And I found that I started using it in races, but then started to do it in workouts. And now I do it, like I'm in med school right now and we take a lot of tests, and I find myself doing mantras in the middle of the test if I'm getting overwhelmed or if I'm not thinking as clearly as I want to. And so the one I used for my most recent test was calm heart, clear mind. And I would just say that whenever I started to get a little flustered, and it would kind of keep me on task.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Very good. Any Jack or Rachel, any running or otherwise in life, any kind of positive mantras or things you guys use at all?
Go ahead, Rachel.
I guess, yeah, let's see. Probably the one I use for life the most, it's actually tattooed on my body, is never let fear decide fate. It's kind of just going along with like really, listening to your heart and following your gut instinct and yeah, like using fear as a positive thing. So that's kind of my big daily life one. And then kind of like Colin said, in races, I definitely bring in mantras, but each race is a little different. So yeah, it kind of depends on the race. But one that I keep going back to is relax in a state of stress, especially in a 5K or a longer race, trying to like stay as relaxed emotionally and physically as possible for as long as possible before expending a bunch of energy right at the end, physically and emotionally. So that's kind of a big race mantra.
That's great.
Yeah, those are good. I mean, a mantra is a centering device, basically, right? So it's to bring us back to our own center so that all the distracting influences around us are not so distracting. And we can be aware of them, but not let them. The mistake, I think, at times is to try to eliminate them, and then they just become bigger monsters. So if we let them be, but put them on the mantle place and tell them to sit over in the corner and not get in the way because we're busy here doing something, whatever it is. So my meditation mantra doesn't really fit well or work well when I'm engaged in vigorous physical activity in a race or biking. So I use my breathing as my centering device at times. And I really focus. It may not necessarily have a word with it, although rhythm comes to mind when I'm thinking this. But I will really focus on my breathing, just like doing pranayamas in meditation, where because we have to be breathing anyway, and we're doing it, and it's happening of its own accord, whether we're conscious of it or not. So I can use that as my conscious anchor point, and I just literally focus and force it. Even Bill Bowerman, the coach at Oregon, Steve Prefontaine's coach at Oregon, founder of Nike, talked about that. And he had a little theory way back when in the 60s, this idea of if when you really, once your heart rate's up and you're heaving and huffing and puffing late in the late stages of a race or a hard workout that you're doing, and he talked about even literally pursing your lips and kind of forcing your exhale and blowing the air out. When the inhale takes care of itself, our lungs just fill up. But if you forcefully but deliberately force the air out, but by pursing your lips, it doesn't just all exhale. It's and he talked about building almost I don't know the right term, a backdraft in your lungs. I mean, it was all speculation on his part. No science behind any of that. But it certainly works for me as a centering device and a place to park my thought, and and it takes my mind off how tired I am. I just keep. It's like throwing coal into the locomotive engine. I just think of transferring oxygen and moving it, and it keeps me from tying up, especially if I anchor it or if I attach the word rhythm to it or relaxation. Just relax and rhythm, and that's about the best thing that has worked for me over the years.
Nice. Yeah. No, I think those are all great. That's it's makes sense that if you can just recenter, and again the breathing part too, I like a lot. We work a lot just with our patients on breathing. People come in, non-runners as well, just who are in pain and they're stressed out and they've got a lot of stuff going on and they have pain. And we see all the time, just training people how to breathe properly, we can drop pain levels, from like an 8 out of 10 to like a 3 or 4 out of 10. There's big gains just by focusing only on their breathing, like just having them think about their breathing, and that's it. And we can see pain levels drop. We can see a lot of interesting things like that. So it makes sense for the performance aspect as well as, again, day-to-day life, meditations, however you want to think about it. So that's very good. Let me look at my list here and see what else. Oh, the one, another thing I wanted to touch base on too was the importance of teamwork, and sometimes we have teams to rely on, but also friends and family during adverse times. We can certainly draw joy and gratitude, through our relationships, especially right now when our relationships are taking place through Zoom and TV screens like this. It's a little harder, but yeah, what I was curious you guys' thoughts on how you use, in your relationships with significant others and friends and things like that to in adverse times, and in difficult times. Feel free to expand on that or go in any direction with that you want to.
I'll start this
All right.
Yeah, I feel so much gratitude for my support system, family, friends, partner, coach. They're like everything when adversity hits, in the sense of being able to lean on people and to have people center you, and to have people, like Jack's saying, a lot of this comes back to centering, and to just breathing into it, and having those people to be by your side through the good, but especially through the bad, and to help you get back to a place that is happier and easier. But I think all through my life I've always been able to be really blessed in being able to lean on my family, and they've always supported me and got me to where I am today. So that support system, both with creating opportunities and helping me follow my heart, but then being there when times are tough, and yeah, right now it's a tough time, and finding those ways to really lean on your support system and connect with others, so you're not feeling alone through any difficulties, is so valuable. So yeah, endless gratitude for the support systems we have, and that comes to physical therapy too. I mean, gosh, going through injuries, or just especially injury prevention, the support systems that we have as runners, and with our physical therapists, and anyone that you're never standing on that start line alone. So that's I think running is way more of a team thing than it appears to be sometimes.
And I guess you do have to kind of build your own team, right? For whether we're talking again about running or other things, you have to have, build that support system, and it might be more medically based, as we're talking about physical therapy and stuff, or otherwise it might be just, again, teammates to run with, or again, spouses and significant others and other things. But yeah, certainly a valuable, commodity almost. So something valuable to have in your life, definitely. To kind of navigate those things. We have one other question I'm gonna bring in actually from the side here. What new sources of joy have any of you three discovered or rediscovered during these past few weeks? So a challenging question here. It's not always easy to find.
They're awesome guests too. We got
Yeah.
Colin's wife asked that question.
I know. I think Colin should have to answer this.
She's got to be a part of my answer, and she obviously is. But no, I think just time with family and making time for family, I've really rediscovered. So the past 5 or 6 months, everyone in my class of medical school has been super focused on this one test that we take at the end of our second year. And during that time, it's easy to let other things like relationships and family slide. And I was fortunate enough to be with both my family and my wife, Ashling's family, at various points during the last couple of months. And it's just, I realized how incredibly refreshing it is to finish your day and sit down to dinner with your siblings or parents or brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and parents-in-law, and just like Rachel was saying, how it kind of brings you out of yourself, and especially during this isolating time, it's really easy to get very isolated in your own mind and just be thinking about your own issues, and spending time with other people just totally brings you out of yourself, and makes you recognize the good that is around you. So I'm really grateful for that, for just simple moments with family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, those are all great. I guess, let me see, where do I go with this? Again, coming back to finding that seed of opportunity in whatever adversity there is. So what we're dealing with now, when I get up in the morning, I'm feeling sorry for myself. I do my checklist, my to-do list. Oh, how am I going to do all these things? Oh, I have to do all these things. Changing the structure of that conversation to I get to do. Well, look at all the things I get to do. And what do I have that's positive in my life? Just do a real quick 30-second checklist. What do I have in my life right here, right now, today, that I have to be thankful for? And then once again, and then to start focusing on those. And with all the Dana-Farber runners that I work with, and there are 500 people here, I will try to, again, cognitively structure it such that I have the opportunity to make a contribution to their efforts. They're asking questions on what they should do with their training now. Things are different. The rug's been pulled out from underneath all of us. But to help them try to keep that in perspective, yeah, we don't get to run a race, but we're still, contributing to a very valuable, important cause with your fundraising. Let's keep that all going. You can keep your motor running in terms of your training, and we're going to give you something to train toward and focus on, regardless of what it ends up looking like, whether it's 26 miles on September 14th or some other celebration that we create virtually amongst ourselves, so that people are still sharing those efforts all toward a larger, bigger cause that are helping other people. So to keep reminding yourself that you have the opportunity to make a contribution and be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And that helps me take my mind off of my own individual, mishigas at any given time. So, and then you work your way out of your funk. That
Yeah.
that way has worked for me.
No, I like that, touching on helping others, because that definitely, again, it's a good refocus. And yeah, always, I think always is a very basic thing to generate gratitude, is just helping other people. I know we just started kind of getting back to work. We were doing telehealth, which was nice, but started seeing some people live. And again, just a couple people a week, just helping people, that, boy, it really makes you feel so much better about everything. So I think definitely, yeah, you helping all those people, and all of us helping anyone else, because as you guys are touching on, how much our families have helped us. Likewise, I know they probably feel the same way about you guys. You've also helped them, which is, again, kind of goes full circle. So kind of nice that way. I guess ask one or two other questions here, and then just see if there's any other closing thoughts. We'll bring it a little more running focused again now. How do you guys feel as far as how running in particular has helped you through some difficult times? And so whether that's running helping you through a difficult time with running, or just running helping you through some difficult personal times, which maybe happens slightly more often. But yeah, anybody have any personal experiences, stories with running kind of helping you through any of those difficult times?
I've just I'll do a quick one. So just these past couple of months, so I mentioned that I've been studying for this test for a really long time, and due to the coronavirus situation, my testing date kept getting canceled and then pushed back, and it happened probably 6 or 7 times. And each time it happened, I would spend 2 hours just being crushed, devastated. I had been so focused on this date and being ready for this date, and all of a sudden it was gone. And so I'd crawl into my bed for 2 hours and just be really, really down. And then I'd lace up my shoes, I'd go for a run. And by the end of it, I wasn't back to being happy-go-lucky and everything, but I was centered. I was back to myself. And then I'd talk to my wife, and she'd make some joke about it and find the humor in it. And then I'd be feeling okay. And it was just that, I don't know what it is about running. It's the endorphins, or if it's the time outside or what, but it really can bring you out of a funk. And that, combined with a nice conversation with someone you love, is really, really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of touching on what Colin's saying is, I find that running helps me through difficult times or anything in general, really, because it helps me really connect to myself, and really clears my mind a lot of the time. Like, it can help me think through some of the things that I'm struggling with. And then it also, I find, really connects me to other people, whether that's people I'm running with or just having taken care of myself. I can take care of people better by having gone for a run. And the third thing, I think it really connects me to the environment and especially to nature better, which I think makes me a better person in a lot of ways. So yeah, running helps me on a lot of levels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that axiom, the notion that no runner ever can finish their run and regretted that they had done it, right? So you almost always feel better after the fact, unless you come home with an injury, I suppose. You know, and then I thought maybe I shouldn't have done quite so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Colin talked on it. We get the adrenaline high, which is a real thing. I mean, we've all talked with runners who say, "What is this runner's high thing? I never get it." You know, but can be so subtle that they don't realize it.
Yeah.
And sometimes my appreciation of it is if I have a day where I don't work out, I wake up the next morning and it's like, God, there's something missing. What's off? And I realize, wow, I didn't get my daily fix the day before or something. And so it's just that, again, it's sort of a centering device. And while when we finish a good workout, because of that, endorphin rush and all the, things that come along with it, and just the time out sometimes. When we start a lot of our runs, the laundry list of things to do is still kind of coursing through our mind. And within 5 to 10 minutes, all of a sudden, the workout, the exercise commands our attention, and by default, it becomes our mantra. Okay, so it brings us into the present, and that's the hallmark of any form of meditation, is it gets us into the present tense. Negative experiences don't reside in the present; they reside in the past in the form of resentment, um, or future anxiety about some impending event in our life. But in the true present, in the true moment, those don't exist. We just are. And we are that way when we, in the midst of it, every aerobic workout that we do, once the adrenaline starts flowing and it commands our attention, I think, to the centering device. And so then when we finish, we come back and the laundry list, the to-do list is still there, but rather than it being our perception of that being it's a frontal assault, it's now sort of in a single file. So we can attack them one at a time. And it just, I think, puts us in a better position, a better sense of control. It may just be an illusion. It may just be the drug talking to us, the adrenaline talking to us, but that's okay. It works, right? So it makes us more effective at what we're doing. And so we hear all the time, about making us more efficient and effective if we take those timeouts from work rather than laboriously grind out at the desk for 12 hours a day. A good portion of that time is less effective than it would be if we took the time, whatever the timeout might be, and get recentered and then come back, so we're much more effective at what we're doing and efficient. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. That's really good. All right, we'll do one more question and then we'll wrap it up. Somebody put in, how frequently do you feel burnt out from running or exercising? And then how do you find the reset so that you can find joy in it again? So you get burnt out, you're not really, you're dreading it, those things. But again, somehow I know clearly all three of you, have find ways to kind of hit some kind of a reset button and get that joy again. We all have ups and downs. Yeah, how do you guys find that joy again when you're kind of burnt out and in that realm, from exercising and running? And we can start. Well, I'm going to pick it. We're going to start with Jack this time.
Okay. I think it was Will Rogers who said, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. So usually the burnout comes from not enough, an imbalance in the workload and the recovery load. And we continue to pile on and we don't sufficiently recover between the workloads, and that it accumulates over a period of time. And then finally, after weeks or maybe months of this relentless not recovering quite sufficiently enough, for the workload we're doing, then it just is accumulated to where we're just never really fully rested and always fatigued emotionally, psychologically, and physically. And it certainly leads to, if not an injury or an illness, then some form of burnout is the next step. It happens, and it's very formulaic, and you can see it happen. And so whenever the runners I work with come to me with this notion, I say, you got to take some time off. You can do active recovery, kind of change your workouts, go from running to biking and swimming, and change it up. But don't take it to the well at all. Just kind of show up and go through some movements. It might just be a nice walk. Just go out and walk and do yoga, and not just for a couple of days. It might be a whole week or almost a week to 2 weeks. Sometimes people really need that kind of a break from it, and they're just recharging the batteries, refilling the reservoir. Choose whatever metaphor you want, but that's the whole process, and we all have to do that. And so, yeah, whenever I find myself burning out, I change the channel, I back off, I throttle back. And it's hard to do when you're a really competitive athlete. Back in the old days, if I had anything to change in my own career, it would be that. I just had this conversation earlier today with somebody. What would I do differently? I would really much more greatly appreciate the recovery aspect, and because I never did. We go out for an easy run on your recovery day, and you're feeling pretty good, and all of a sudden you're running sub 6 minute pace. And, I'm going to put a couple more pennies in the bank. I feel great, right? And what we do is leave ourselves a little more fatigued the next day when it's time to really go to the well, and we can't go as deeply as we need. And so that just becomes this downward spiral. So back off, give yourself a break, give yourself permission to just really rest and recover in whatever manner you choose. Active recovery is usually better than passive. Don't just lay in the bed for a week, but really throttle back, change the channel, go for easy runs, take your watch off, little behavioral things you can do. But if you're feeling burnt out, you probably are, and so you just need to stop digging.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Rachel, any specific resets you use to kind of refresh?
Yeah, I think what Jack just said is spot on. I personally get really tired at the end of my racing years. So in the fall, I'm coming off a big block of traveling all the time and racing all the time. So when my last race is done, I'm definitely ready for a big reset. And usually I'll take about 2 weeks off from it's no running. And, but I find so much joy in getting outside and going for hikes or camping or, staying out late with friends and just not worrying so much about checking off the checklist of keeping in good habits. So at the end of those 2 weeks, I'm usually so excited to get back into a routine with running again and find a lot of joy in that. But I do think, checking in during training blocks is huge if you are feeling fatigued. And I'll typically take 1 day off a week from running and do some sort of active recovery. And I find that such a good way to reset right before starting another big week of training. So try to avoid burnout in general by putting in those little weekly resets.
Yeah. Colin, either running or medical school, you could take your pick.
Yeah, no, I think what Jack and Rachel both said is fantastic. From Jack, I got the idea that burnout can kind of creep in gradually, and you might not necessarily notice it when it first starts to happen. And I definitely think that's true for me. I remember the first time I thought that might be true was my senior year at Georgetown, and I had a really bad Tuesday workout. And so my coach at the time, Brandon Bonzi, just said, all right, just take tomorrow off, go do something else. So I remember sitting in Saxby's coffee shop right outside of Georgetown's campus and eating a muffin just by myself while people are practicing, thinking like, gosh, I've been really getting tired and I had no idea. It just totally crept up on me. And so since then, I've tried to get better and better at realizing when it might be happening before it's happening. And it's a constant struggle. But the way I try to do it is just to put in a down week every now and then. And that's what I really liked about what Rachel said, is kind of scheduling in these times where you're checking in with yourself and wondering how you're feeling and whether you are getting burned out. And then like anticipating it ahead of time and having time scheduled to reset. And then I also really like what Rachel said about how towards the end of those times, she's starting to get excited about training. And that's when I know that I'm like good, I'm done with my down week because I'm pumped up about my next workout. And when I'm not pumped up about my next workout, then I've got to start thinking like, have I gone too far? Do I need a down week right now?
Mm-hmm. Nice, excellent, very good. Well, thank you guys. Oh, go ahead, Jack. Yeah.
Well, no, just adding on to what Rachel and Colin said. One sort of admonishment I'll give some of our runners who are experiencing some sense of burnout or just excess fatigue, to be seeking exhilaration as opposed to exhaustion in your workouts. Okay, so make sure you finish it feeling exhilarated, and make that be your pursuit of the day. So whatever you have to do, however little you have to do, so that you can finish it feeling a sense of exhilaration, as opposed to, adding to the exhaustion aspect of it, can be another way to help set you up so that you do just the appropriate amount of work that helps bring you back out of it slowly.
That's great. Great advice. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much, Jack, Rachel, Colin. I really, really appreciate you guys getting together tonight and discussing some of this stuff. I hope it's been helpful to people out there, people who tune in. We'll post this on our YouTube channel after, so people can replay it if you missed it or only caught part of it. And again, we want to just thank everyone for tuning in tonight. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.